Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shishimad Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Haridas ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki ISKCON Guru Vrinda Ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadvaita Garadhar Shivas Arigoda Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Vrajabhumi Vrindavan Dham Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Yamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Garavani Picharane Nivishesha Shinyavari Paschija Deshatarne Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'm reading from this book called Srila Prabhupada is Coming, and my personal memories of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, by my god sister Mahamaya Devi Dasi. Parthasarathy Maharaj said that after he read this book, he liked it so much he wrote a letter to Mahamaya thanking her for this book. Of course, we're thankful for all these memoir books of people who've had association with Srila Prabhupada and who have written books. So Mahamaya joined, about 1971. Yep. Joined in Boston Temple. Boston is it's in the northeast of the United States. Boston, Massachusetts. And at that time, Satsvarup was the temple president, and he was married to Jadurani, who became a famous painter. And Satsvarup Maharaj wrote the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, or Prabhupada Lilamrita. And he was editor of Back to Godhead and one of our early leaders. So we were reading about Mahamaya previous to joining. She had learned the Hare Krishna mantra, but she was afraid of joining the temple. She was living in Hawaii, and there was a group that had learned the Hare Krishna mantra, but they weren't really ISKCON, but later they joined ISKCON. But when she met them, the men all had long hair and they were kind of like hippies, but they would chant Hare Krishna. So she learned there, and there was a musical that had the Hare Krishna mantra in it, and she learned the chanting of Hare Krishna there. And it's a bird. I don't know. I'm not guilty. It's not my phone. So anyway, she, like many of us, she had gotten into bad habits, and she was living with some people in Boston, but she was taking LSD, and LSD is used for psychologists and things nowadays. It has to be controlled by, usually there's somebody there to make sure everything is okay, because people have had post-traumatic stress disorder and things. If it's supervised, they can take LSD and it can help them get their mind away from their phobias and things. But I don't think she was. So it became a thing, and on LSD she started just chanting Hare Krishna. And the people didn't know what to do with her. So they said, why don't we visit the Hare Krishna temple? Because there was a Hare Krishna temple in Boston. And she said, I don't want to join the temple. He said, no, we're only going for a visit. And this was Sunday night, about 11 p.m. And they went there. And then some devotees started talking to her, and Kula Shekhar, and these people left her there. And they showed her where the women's quarters were, and then they got her up at 4 o'clock, showed her how to put on. They put a sari on her because she'd just come. So anyway, and then she kind of like was forced into temple life. So, chapter 4, initiations from Srila Prabhupada. So she had association with Ananga Manjari and Jadharani and some good devotees, and they helped. Okay, this is called Initiations from Srila Prabhupada, settling down to temple life. Srila Prabhupada is coming. Talk about nectar. Hearing these 4 words proved the ultimate high. So this is the name of the book. Srila Prabhupada is coming. Talk about nectar. Hearing these 4 words proved the ultimate high, and I kept hearing them. The first few months I lived in the Boston temple, anticipating Srila Prabhupada's arrival, gave us hope and enabled us to do extra hours of devotional service we might not have otherwise wanted to do. Actually, every devotee except me wanted Srila Prabhupada to come to Boston soon. I hoped Srila Prabhupada wouldn't come until I'd been in the movement 6 months, so I could be initiated by him in person. During my first few months in ISKCON, I attended the morning and evening temple programs, and during the day typed for ISKCON Press. Okay, before we had BBT, Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, it was called ISKCON Press. And she was a typist, so they had her working in the press. Every day, I also went out for an hour of Harinam Sankirtan, that's street chanting. We chanted Hare Krishna and danced in the streets and collected donations for Back to Godhead magazines. The days of freebies were soon over. We had to cover our printing costs, so they had to get a donation. On Sundays, I always helped cut veggies or make samosas, and what they call it here in South Africa as kachoris, or what Prabhupada called samosas. It's just this is an ISKCON samosa. A kachori is something else. It's, as it was described in another place, it's a flying saucer-shaped, and it's stuffed with urad dal and deep fried, but it's a different shape. It's more round. I loved the action-filled kitchen. Sometimes pungent aromas of the chaunces made by frying spices in ghee, clarified butter, forced me to run out of the kitchen sneezing with tears in my eyes. So Prabhupada wanted us to cook with ghee. Everything was cooked with ghee. One time I was in Nairobi, and this was after I think some big festival, Janmashtami or something. We made bundi laddu. We had lots of trays with You know what bundi laddu is? The bundi is deep fried little balls, and then the fancy way is you put some like nuts and dried fruit in, but you can do it plain also with just the bundi is with chana, chickpea flour, deep fried batter, and then you make a sugar syrup and it all sticks together. So in Nairobi, we had these trays of sugar syrup left over, and the whole kitchen became infested with bees. And they didn't know what to do. No, the cooks didn't want to go in the kitchen because it was full of bees. They said, Ramanuja, what are we going to do? It's full of bees. So I said, okay, we get one big karai and put some oil in it. And then we heated the oil till it was smoking hot and put some handfuls of dried chilies in until it started to get really bad. Then I turned the fire off and I put in a pot of water. And the chilies were stuck on the ceiling, but there were dead bees everywhere. You know what that smells like? When you put... Here they call it braising. Here they called it a chonk. Sometimes devotees would misunderstand Prabhupada when he would say something, and like he would talk about a kitchery and they would call it kittery. So anyway, she was talking about it like really piercing, and the bees were dead. And so we got rid of the bees. Anyway, she was just saying, I was forced. Sometimes pungent aromas of the chaunces made by frying spices in ghee, especially chilies, forced me to run out of the kitchen sneezing with tears in my eyes. Extra classes on the nectar of devotion and Sri Ishopanishad for new devotees helped me solidify my Krishna consciousness. The Nectar of Devotion was ISKCON's devotional law book, containing the do's and do nots, and lots of sweet pastimes of Lord Krishna, which made it clear what our potential spiritual relationships with him are. I liked chanting in unison with other neophytes the 19 shlokas or verses of Sri Ishopanishad and memorizing them. I also learned by rote the Sanskrit and Bengali prayers we sang daily by carrying around slips of paper with the words and learning to pronounce them. Most important, I never missed a day of chanting 16 rounds on my japa beads. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Living in the temple, I felt sheltered from the material world's onslaughts. One of my favorite activities was taking a break from our daily routine, jumping in the van and bringing books, posters, prasadam, and musical instruments to classrooms in schools and universities. Various teachers invited us, and the students always paid attention and often responded to our enticements to chant with us. Satsvarup Prabhu, one of the first devotees to join the movement in 1966, taught a weekly evening seminar at Boston University in the Adult Education Department. and many times I and some other devotee accompanied him. His seminar differed from the classroom visits. 10 or 11 students sat around a conference table and listened to his discourse and then asked questions. I could often relate better to their questions than to his answers because my knowledge of Krishna consciousness wasn't much beyond rudimentary. Once while traveling back, I said, I felt your answer to the girl's question was way over my head because I had not understand his answer myself. You could have answered her question, he said humbly. Next time that happens, you answer. I was astounded by his humility. I felt unqualified to answer my question. What to speak of answering one in the presence of such a senior devotee? Another evening, Satsvarup Prabhu and I emerged from the seminar in a blizzard that had covered Boston with more than a foot of snow. It stopped the trolley cars, our transportation home. And knowing that our Soul Temple vehicle was unavailable, we had to hitchhike back. Few cars were out in the snow, but one old car stopped and offered us a ride. You know that we have trolley cars, it's a street car. There's like, on the city streets there would be rails. And there would be usually one or two cars would go on the rails. They have them in certain countries, not here. Huh? What? Yeah. No, those are cable cars. But when I grew up, we used to call them streetcars. Here they call them trolleys. And then in San Francisco, but not the... Sometimes they had, like they used to have this train here, and it used to have like booms that go up and we'd get electricity from the lines. So they would, some of them were like buses. But anyway, they got stuck in a blizzard, not Durban. Few cars were out in the snow, but an old car stopped and offered us a ride. We climbed into the back seat and found ourselves among friendly hippies willing to share their marijuana. We refused, of course. After they dropped us off, I thought, I do identify more with the devotees. I've come a long way. One Sunday in March, Ananga Manjari got married to Hridayananda Prabhu. I love seeing the Vedic wedding, which included a yajna or fire sacrifice. A small fire was lit in a sand-filled walk in the sacrificial arena. So in those days when we did a fire sacrifice, we used a karai. The Chinese name is a wok. It's a little different from a karai. A wok is more shallow, but it's basically the same thing. So they would put sand in there and do the fire sacrifice in there. I don't know, Prabhupada told us to do it. So they had a fire sacrifice. Ananga Manjari married Hridayananda. A small fire was lit in a sand-filled walk in the sacrificial arena, while chanting Sanskrit mantras, the priest poured ladles of ghee over the fire, and the couple and the audience tossed into the fire small handfuls of raw rice and sesame seeds. With each addition of ghee, grains and seeds, the flames rose higher. At the end, the couple carefully placed 2 bananas in the fire, and the knot was literally tied with the corners of her sari and his dhoti, the wrapped outer cloth worn by men on the lower part of the body, and it stayed tied the rest of the day. We celebrated the happy occasion with a big feast. Not long afterward, the newlyweds moved away to open new temples. I looked forward to seeing them again. Next heading: Learning to typeset Srila Prabhupada's books. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Palika Dasi, the wife of Bhavananda Das, the president of the Brooklyn Temple, was in Boston typesetting Srila Prabhupada's books. Do you want to learn composing and move to New York with ISKCON Press? She asked me. So I guess they decided to move from Boston to New York. Yes, I said, because I wanted to be more involved. Publishing was in my blood. I think she mentioned it earlier, that her father